Welcome back to episode 6 of the Sports Diary podcast. Before we dive into today's episode, we wanted to make our listeners aware that we will be discussing topics related to eating disorders, body image, and disordered eating. Please take care while listening to this episode, and if you feel the subject may be too sensitive, please feel free to skip this episode or parts of it if you need to. Your well-being is our priority.
Today we welcome world champion cheerleader Laura Wordley to the podcast. Laura has competed 9 times at the Cheerleading Worlds in America with All-Star Cheer Team, Coventry Dynamite and Team England. We hear from Laura about just how physically and mentally demanding cheerleading is, preparing for competitions and building on the trust within a team dynamic. Laura opens up about struggling with her eating disorder, the challenges and recovery. Welcome back to a brand new episode with us, and today joining us is the one, the only Laura. so excited to have you on. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Yourself?
Thank you. Yeah, very well, thank you.
Amazing. Right, we're going to kick it off like we always do with what are 3 interesting facts about you?
3 interesting facts. First one is, although I'm into cheer quite a lot, I am a teacher. I've been teaching for 9 years now, so I guess that's a little bit interesting. Secondly, I've got a peanut allergy, and I did have to go to A&E once when I had a curry that had peanuts in.
Oh my
I
God.
didn't know. So yeah, that wasn't great. My third interesting fact is my favourite colour is pink.
Is it?
Although I'm not wearing any pink, but
I was just about to go, are you wearing pink?
yeah, but it actually is.
So, sometimes I look at people and I think, like for me, like you wouldn't. I'm not a pink person, like at
No,
all.
you're really
like,
not.
I'm like a black or a navy or an orange, but I wouldn't look at you and think, oh, pink.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't really wear pink, but if I was to choose my favourite colour, I'd be like pink, yeah.
That's an interesting fact.
So obviously we've had the privilege of cheering with you, which
Yeah.
is super exciting, and we had some of the best times. But first of all, what sparked your interest in cheerleading?
I've done gymnastics since I was 4. I loved it. I got to uni. I did gym there for my first year, and I kind of heard about cheerleading. So I went to the trials, and it was just like I loved it. I loved the fact I could still do my gym, but also like the stunting, teamwork, and obviously at uni there's a lot of socials. I just absolutely loved it. Like I couldn't get enough of it. If I could cheer every day, I would. But that's basically how I got into it. Uni.
Oh, awesome. That's really cool.
Uni's a good one. I remember going to tryouts for my uni team, and although it was like lower level, it was just really nice to train like at that level and just actually have some fun with it. So that was really nice.
So with your gymnastics then, like, how did that come about? I'm really interested, actually.
I don't know. My mum just started me going to gym when I was 4, and then I don't know. I was just like naturally pretty good at it, I guess. And then I just carried on doing it. But I got to the point when I went to uni that I did it for so long that I was kind of like ready for a change. So yeah, that's basically.
I suppose with cheerleading as well, you've got so many elements to that.
Yeah.
You were a flyer, so which is like really cool, and you can got those tricks in the air. Like tumbling as well, so you can keep on top of that, which is
exactly.
nice. It's just a whole array.
It's all put together.
It's a great sport. Must try it. Okay, so you have competed at the World Championships for Team England and Coventry Dynamite 9 times, which is incredible, by the way.
It's scary how many times it is.
Not that old.
I'm too old now.
Can you talk us through that journey?
Yeah, so I remember when I was at uni, after my first year, like I said, I was absolutely obsessed. I was like, I remember looking at Unity Black. We all know Unity Black back in the day.
Yeah.
Literally looked up to them. And I remember looking at this fly, I won't say who it was, but I was like actually obsessed. I was like, I would want to be her. So I was just, all I could think about, I remember going on holiday and thinking, I just want to be on Unity Black. I want to be that good. So I kind of looked around at uni to see if there's any teams nearby that were kind of like a little bit higher up. And I somehow went to Coventry Dynamite trials and made the team. I was absolutely terrible, honestly. I was so bad. Couldn't even do an extended lib. It was so bad. So yeah, I somehow managed to get on the team and went to Worlds. And that year it was kind of like a huge thing just to go to Worlds. Yeah. We all know like cheer's so different now. Like so many teams go to Worlds, but it's more competitive. But back then it was like just to get to Worlds was like amazing. Yeah. So that was just, I can remember being so nervous my first time going to Worlds. I was honestly so nervous. And then since then, I just carried on. I loved it so much. And obviously the team went from being that small team in 2013 with only like 4 boys to now being like 5 teams going to Worlds almost. So, yeah.
It's insane.
And I remember, obviously, Team England, I tried out in 2014. There was quite a few of us from Coventry, but I didn't get on that team that year. And I was absolutely gutted. I was like just so embarrassed, really. Yeah, kind of, I was like, set me back a little bit. But after that, I kind of worked really hard, found a stunt group that I could trust and enjoyed stunting with. And then we tried out again in 2016. And then that was my first year of Team England. That was amazing. Like, being a part of Team England is so good because with people all over the country that like you've seen on different teams, but like you actually come together. So yeah, that's kind of how it started, really.
Oh, awesome.
So obviously we're very aware of how active cheerleading is, but for those like unfamiliar, how would you describe the level of athleticism required for competitive cheerleading?
Oh, it's quite hard to describe because like it's your whole body, isn't it? It's like you're literally
savage.
your whole body. Like I remember the first Team England session I went to, which was like the first time I'd done like a whole weekend of like 10 till 5. And I remember waking up and I was thinking, I actually can't walk.
Move.
I can't move. Walking down the stairs, I cannot move. Like it is a lot. Like I think if you don't do anything outside of cheer, you would struggle.
Yeah.
Like I had to go to the gym to get my cardio up. Like to be fair, you don't need to do too many weights because you're literally holding your whole body, or if you're a base, you're lifting people up. But it is a lot to get through that 2.5 minutes routine. Like you need a lot of fitness. Like by the end, you are literally dead.
Yeah.
And obviously at training, we do that multiple times. It's hard. I
I
can't
remember
even
moving.
describe.
I remember moving from one team to Coventry Dynamite, and it was like the bear crawls up and down the mats. And I would go home, and it would be like, I've got to go back again tomorrow, and I cannot move. My whole body is killing me from like everything. And even as like a flyer, and then like tumbling, like there's like a whole like hour dedicated just to tumbling, and I wasn't the best tumbler in the world, like at all. I could barely throw a backhand spin. But it was savage.
I think that's the conception though. People think cheerleading is just dancing around, don't they? Still, even now,
Pom-poms.
pom-poms. Like you don't need much like
Leg
physical
kicks.
fitness, dancing around, and it's literally like no, it is one of the hardest sports ever.
Yeah,
For
and
everyone, not just like
say
bases.
about cheerleading and how like it's not in the Olympics, it's not a real sport, and I'm like, you have no idea, absolutely no idea. And I think if you're not involved in it, you really don't have a clue.
And I just think it shouldn't be called cheerleading, should it? Do you know what I mean? Like you're not cheering for anybody.
No.
Like,
No.
So if it was called something else, maybe people would take it seriously. I don't know, but it's just so hard.
I just think it's mad though, the amount of different sections into a routine is in 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And my 2.5 minutes to a cheer 2.5 minutes are very different, but my goodness.
And it's not even just about like if there's a section and you're maybe crouched at the back, or you're maybe a front spot or whatever, you're shouting at your flyer. So do you know what I mean? Like, you're using that small bit of breath you've got left inside you to shout like, come on.
1, 3.
You have to be so mentally strong, don't you? Because when you get to that pyramid and you've got, it sounds like only 30 seconds, but that is a lot. You've got the whole pyramid and dance to get through. And I'm like,
once you get to the end
How
of
am I
that
gonna do it?
pyramid and you think just the dance
God.
to go, and you're trying to go full out, you feel sick, and then if you've got a bit that ends on the floor, you're like, oh
yeah,
God,
breathe.
crawling off that mat.
it is hard.
Mental.
It is. So basically, coming off from that, as we've discussed, cheerleading is a very highly team-oriented sport. So how do you kind of touched it upon there when you said you've just made your group, obviously for Team England. So how did you build your trust with them and obviously have that strong communication with your teammates?
I think I was really lucky because when I joined Cov, I got friends with some people on the team that were my stunt group. I had a mental block for like years with backwards tumbling, which has literally stuck with me my whole life. I landed on my neck once, so anything like going backwards, basically, I would just freeze. You probably saw me do it loads of times. But especially like rewinds, when I got to like the high level, I would just go up and freak out, and then I'd have to trust that they were going to catch me because I've just freaked out. So I was really lucky that I was friends with them, so I could say, look, I can't do it anymore. I need to have a break. Whereas if I was with somewhere else or a different team, you might have some more coaches or people that would be like, go again. And that's like the worst possible thing for me. I can't do it. You just need a break. So I was pretty lucky that actually I was friends with my bases and they trusted, I could trust them, and we built it up basically from the start and built it up. So that's how I basically gained my confidence. I could trust them.
Yeah, I had a similar situation where I was dropped on my neck
Yeah.
from the like fold over, and every single time I'd had to do it, I would just freak out. Like I'd want to just run away, like and cry, and
And you have your coaches screaming at you like, go again, you've got to do it. And then it would almost be like sometimes, if you don't do it this time, everyone's going to do this many burpees. And I'm like, well, that is literally the worst possible thing for me because I can't.
Yeah, and then it was like, I don't want to get taken out of this section. Like I don't want someone else because, you know, then they're going to look at me and be like, well, you know, we can't trust you, we can't rely on you. And then I feel like with stunting, it's a bit like gambling. Like you can rep that so many times, but when you get on that mat,
Oh my goodness.
like one wrong hand placement or you only give 50%, you're done.
I used to get scared that I was going to freak out. So it'd be like I wasn't even worried about doing the skill. I'd be scared of myself, like freaking out. It's that split moment in your head. It's like, oh, I'm going to do it, and then it's like, no, I'm not. And then just open out. I'm like, oh. And then they have to catch me like upside down. I'm like, sorry guys.
Sorry.
Thanks for catching.
So you've just touched on your neck injury. So how do you like mentally bounce back from like maybe like mistakes during a performance or those injury setbacks?
I think mistakes in a performance was like the hardest thing for me really because I'd never ever fallen at a competition since I started like 2011 up until it was about 2019. So like
That's a good one.
I was like I've never fell. I want to like finish cheer without falling. And I remember it was like the worst one for me is I remember I fell twice, but it wasn't like a little fall. I remember I was on the back on the floor in the middle of the like competition, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so embarrassed. Like, what do I do? Like, this has never happened. And I remember coming off the floor and thinking, everyone's gonna hate me. Like, I've ruined it. You just get the guilt, don't you? You're the person that's fallen.
Yeah.
So that was horrible, really. I remember crying, and I had really supportive coach, and they were like, don't worry, like it wasn't just you, all that sort of stuff. But it does take a lot to get back up because you go back and you think, oh, this is the skill that I fell in last time.
Yeah.
And from that, it was all of that season was horrible actually because when I got to that stunt, I was like. And it made me shaky. I probably wasn't going into it as confident, and it never really was perfect the whole season. Mainly because probably the base that I had, I knew I didn't really trust him from then because it was like a hand placement thing. So it's hard to be honest, but you have to trust yourself. Like I had to literally before the stunt, I'd say to myself in my head, I'd be like, oh god, it's going to go shaky. I'd be like, I have to say no, Laura, you can do this. Literally out on the dip, you're doing it. You stayed in the air. Like it's such a battle in your head. Isn't it? Like,
it is.
You can't do it. No, you can't. It's going to be shaky. No, it's not. So it's kind of like I worked on my mental kind of positive thinking, I guess you can call it.
Yeah.
Like just before you go, like saying to myself, no, I can do this. I've done it loads of times before. Because it's true, like you do it so many times in the gym, but it comes down to that one moment.
Yeah.
So I think that was really hard for me, that first time I fell. And then in terms of injuries, I'm pretty lucky to be that I've never had an injury that stopped me going to training.
Yeah.
Like I pulled my hamstring once, which was like, I remember we did the splits, like double up stunt. And it was so painful, and everyone was flat on the floor in splits, and I was like a little pyramid. And so I was like, you need to stretch more, but I was like, I've actually really hurt my hamstring. But now I was really lucky, to be fair, that I've not had to have time away, because I think when people do that, it's horrible, because you think, oh, someone's going to take my place. Like, that's the first thing that comes to your head.
Yeah.
And I always remember thinking, like, if I get injured, I don't know how I'll cope, because if someone's in my spot practicing, I'll feel horrific.
Yeah. And especially if they're hitting that stunt every
Exactly.
single time, clean, it just makes sense for them to stay there.
Yeah.
And I think as a
Exactly.
flyer, there's less spaces. Like, do you know what I mean?
If you're not as flexible as somebody else, like if they're hitting it more solid, why would they put you back in?
Yeah.
And it's just like, great.
For sure.
I just feel like from a base perspective, because I watched you battle with what we used to jokingly call it, an egg roll or something.
Yeah. Oh, they were the worst.
And you would look at me nearly in tears going, no, I cannot do this. And I'm like, no, but you can. We've got you. Like, I promise we've got you, and I will throw myself. And I remember literally chucking myself under you in that stunt. And you went, thank you.
But do you think it's like, I used to feel really sorry for my bases. So I was like, if I do something wrong, like I used to say to them, they'd be like, come on, you can do it. And I'd just not do it again. Like, come on, you can do it. I just wouldn't go again. And I'm like, guys, I'm really sorry. I used to cry because I was just like, I feel so bad that like they are throwing me every time and I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
But my brain will not let me do it.
And that is part of a mental battle. Like, you're counting it and you're like 1, 3. I've got to dip on 5. I have to dip, and then the dip comes and you're like, nah, my leg's buckled. I'm not going up. I can't go up.
That was like me with back tucked. Honestly, I was like, I knew I could do it. I've done it so many times. I've even like done it on the mat. I used to jump up, and then I remember like everyone going 1, 3, and I'm like 1, and then I'd be like,
No. Just step back.
I just can't do it.
I actually will never forget when we hit it on the mat. You went, yes, as
Yeah.
loud as you can. And you were upside down. I was like, told you if we catch you. I think we just had that split second had a conversation and you were fine.
It's like the best feeling ever, though, isn't it? When you've actually
hit it.
Yeah, I can do it.
And I was one of those people that I'm like, look, I know I might not hit it in training, but I promise you when I get on the mat, I will hit
Yeah.
it. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I can take that gamble. Like,
I know. It's like,
really
well,
take
we
that
can't.
risk.
Okay, so how do you prepare for competitions? Obviously, we've literally just touched on this now briefly, mentally and physically, especially during the intense competitions.
I guess, like I say, it's just reps and reps and reps. If I'm struggling with like a skill, I try and do it like outside training as well, so I was confident before going into it. Because if, like I say, I have mental blocks a lot of the time. If I'd go to training and not throw it, I know that the coach would be annoyed with me. Fair enough, because I'm not doing it. I'm not even throwing it. So I guess it's kind of like preparing outside training as well, going to open gyms, practicing the skills. And it's kind of like the training sessions that we had started with at the start of the season. We'd do like 2 full outs in a session, building it up to like 3 or 4. So as a team, we'd kind of build it up that way. Obviously, fitness outside of the gym. We used to get conditioning sent. Did you used to have conditioning sent as well? Yeah. So we used to have conditioning that we got sent.
Film
to
it,
do.
send it in.
But like for me, I used to do loads of exercise anyway. So sometimes I was kind of like, oh, I've got this on top of everything else I do. But other people that didn't maybe do stuff outside, it was quite useful for as well.
Am I right in saying that you were quite into your running, or you still are?
I used to be into my running quite a lot actually. From when I was at school, I always used to get put forward for the cross country and stuff like that because I was just kind of genetically good at it. Hated it, but I was quite good at it. And then I used to do quite a lot of running in lockdown, but then I kind of did. You know, you just do too much. So yeah, I am quite good at running. I do a bit, but not as much as I used to. But that helped me a lot, definitely, because the cardiovascular
side. Oh my god, insane.
Yeah.
Like people always say like you've got like running stamina and like dancing, cheerleading stamina. Like that's harder than running.
It
stamina.
is so true.
So
like,
hard.
it is so true.
People are like, but it's only 2.5 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, 2.5 minutes it will kill me.
It's not like normal. You can't just say it's cardio though. It's like you stretch. It's everything. It's strength. It's like interval training and lifting and cardio, like all combined.
Yeah, for sure.
So hard.
For those who don't know what a cheer routine looks like, could you kind of describe it to the listeners that are listening?
Yeah, so it's 2.5 minutes, and it involves stunting. So either people lifting or throwing. You've got tumbling. So basically gymnastics, tumbling, backflips, and things. And then you've got dance at the end, which doesn't even, when you say it out loud, doesn't actually sound that hard. But when you're starting the routine from start to finish without stopping once, like literally you are not stopping. You go from one stunt, then you go into a tumble, then you go into your next stunt, and then even if you're not in the stunt or you're not in the tumble bit, you're probably doing a basket at the back.
Yeah.
So you literally don't stop the whole time.
No.
Ever. And so you get to the end, 2.5 minutes. It seems like not a lot, but actually you are absolutely exhausted. So yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
It is.
Do you feel that cheerleading gets the recognition it deserves as a competitive sport?
I think we kind of touched on it, but definitely not.
No.
Like I'm a teacher and I say to the students, oh, I'm a cheerleader. But then I always think, I can't sometimes even say like I do gymnastics. Because I'm like, they won't understand and I don't want to have to keep explaining what it is.
Yeah.
So people just think cheerleading is pom-poms,
Yeah,
dancing. Oh, like, what team do you cheer for? And I'm like, I don't cheer for a team, like it's gymnastics. And I show them a video and they're like, oh my God, miss, is that you? And I'm like,
yeah. And that's like, they have to see the videos. Like when people say like, I was a competitive cheerleader, and they just sort of go, all right.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, no, it's way more than that. Like,
No.
I'm not just dancing on pom-poms.
Exactly. And especially like even like the gender thing as well. Like, people think cheerleading's girls
sure.
and stuff. And I was like, when I was on Team England, I always say like there was literally 8 girls on the team, the rest were boys. That was it. Because all the flyers were girls and then all the bases were boys.
Yeah.
And like you see a video and you see it's not about like, you know, that stereotype of like it's everyone's a cheer's gay, like all the boys are gay.
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like actually
It's really not.
it's not. Yeah, it's just a stereotype that it's got in loads of different ways. It's pom-poms, it's just for girls. Like, even if the boys do it, they're gay, they're dancing around. It's like, it's not that at all. Like, it's strength. And you show them a video and they're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Is that person lifting with one hand? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, that one individual is lifting you with one hand. It's like, yes.
So no, I don't think it gets the recognition it deserves at all.
And what would you like to see more people like know about cheerleading?
I guess like how hard it is, really. Like how hard it is. If they were to try it, it's really difficult. I mean, my boyfriend tried to do like literally the easiest partnership of all time. He couldn't do it, and he is strong. Like he goes to the gym and stuff, but it is so technically difficult. You have to do so much work to get to like the minimum, really, don't you?
Yeah.
Even to get like to the low level, you have to do so much work. So yeah,
I think some people just think, oh, like, I go to the gym, like I could do that.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, like there's so much technique
It's
behind
so
it. You
true.
can't just go into a gym and just throw somebody and catch them. Like there's hand placements. Like we need to know where we're putting our feet. Like
The timing,
yeah.
everything. Like
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work.
and so many people are like 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, what are you
What?
doing?
What?
What is
Just
1, 2,
straight away,
3? Yeah, no dip, no dip.
I'll never forget when I went to the gym and I would practice with a dumbbell because I was always second base. So especially in lifts, I would practice with a dumbbell just with my grip to be able to like lift up and then just move it around.
Yeah.
So true.
Like
It is
it's
a lot.
crazy the amount of looks I used to get though. It was so funny. I'm like, I'm practicing my lip. Like you should give it a go. Strength your wrists out, yeah. Okay, so we're going to kind of go a different avenue now. And as the listeners are aware, we've put a trigger warning at the start, so we're just going to get straight into it if you're happy to. So you've recently opened up on social media that you have been struggling with an eating disorder in silence for the last 10 years. Can you talk us through those last 10 years and what has it been like for you?
Yeah, I can talk through, I guess it's quite useful for me to start from where it started and sort of how it progressively got worse. So I've never really had any issues with eating my whole life until it was like my second year of Worlds, I think is when it first started. I've always eaten loads, like literally when I was younger, I used to eat more than all my friends, and I still get people saying like, oh, you look anorexic, because I just was generally genetically quite slim. And so at the time I thought, like, when you think of anorexia, you just think it's someone that's like really, really quite small, and that's all you think of it. I didn't really know anything about it. And then I remember it was like 2014 in my second year of a Worlds team, and people were kind of saying like, oh, we're going on my Worlds diet this year, I want to look toned and stuff, and I was kind of like, at that point, I again didn't really think much of it. And then I guess I was at uni, I was going out quite a lot, and I was like, oh, maybe I should try and, you know, keep it in shape. So I started going to like exercise classes with my housemates, stuff like that. And at the time, I was getting better at cheerleading as well. And I started losing a little bit of weight because I was doing more exercise. I was eating healthier. When I say eating healthier, I was just kind of like not eating as many snacks, I guess, which is not great, but that's how it started. I was eating normally, but limiting the amount of snacks that I had. And I started to lose weight in probably a healthy-ish way to start with, I guess. And at the time, I was also getting better at cheer as well. So I think how I've tried to think back at it is because I was getting better and I was losing weight, in my mind, I was getting better because I'd lost weight. So then it was almost like, right, I'm getting better, so this is good. Like, no, okay, now, like, you need to take that step further. It's kind of like your brain will never be good enough what you're doing. You always have to take it that step further. So it'll be like, right, okay, so I'd run further, or I'd try and eat even less. And I gradually, it wasn't a major thing. It would kind of happen very progressively, slowly over the year. And it was like, by the time I got to Worlds, so from September to April, I visibly, you could probably tell I'd lost weight. But if you saw me, and that was the thing, if you saw me, you wouldn't think, oh, she's anorexic. Because I wasn't like extremely thin, but I was definitely slimmer than I was. And I got compliments about the way I looked. People said, oh, you know, you look really toned, like, you look great. And so I was like, oh, it was like, yay. But like, I knew that I probably at that point, to be fair, actually, at that point, I thought, I didn't know I had a problem. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I look great, let's just carry on. So that's kind of how it started. And then once I'd got that comment that I look good, it was like, okay, well, I need to maintain it now, because if I go put on weight, I don't want people to think I put on weight. And I guess in the cheer world, people kind of say, they don't mean to say it, but they say like, oh, like that fly's one of the bigger flyers. That the bases say it. And genuinely, I know that they don't mean it in a bad way, but once you start losing weight, that's when it triggered in my head that, oh, I don't want to be that person that's the bigger flyer. I want to be the smallest. And then people would say to me, oh, like, you're really light. And I was like, oh, yeah. But then I was like, oh, no, like, I need to be light all the time. I need to be the lightest flyer. So I guess that's how it started. And then it progressively got worse. And I look back now and I actually, like, feel weird, like, about how small I was. And I didn't even realise at the time that I was that small. So that's kind of how it started. And then it would kind of go into my life where I didn't want to eat anywhere unless I knew where I was going. Like, it would have these safe places that, oh, I know that this one's like, I know I can get there. And it started creeping in like that. And then I'd run like 8 kilometres. And then if I went for a run the next day, like, I couldn't do any less. I'd have to do 8 or more because it was like an addiction that my body needed, my brain needed to be like, if I did less, that wasn't good enough. So that's kind of how it started. And then it got worse and worse, really. I then would not really go out as much because I was worried about food and exercise. And if I didn't have time to go to the gym or I didn't have time to go for my run, then I can't go because I can't live my day without doing it. And at the time, I just didn't really realise like how bad it was because I was kind of like, this is just my life. Like, and if anyone said like, well, my mum basically was like worried about me, and she'd say, and I was kind of like, what's she even talking about? Like, I'm fine. I was like, Mum, I'm fine, and I'd be very defensive about it because I was fine. I remember once she left this magazine like in my room, and cause she kept saying like, have you had your period? Have you had your period? I'd be like, yeah, yeah. I knew that I hadn't because I was like, oh, actually, I haven't had my period for a while. Like, I was like, oh, actually, no, I haven't. And it's like about runners and eating disorders and how they've lost their period and stuff, and about she'd say like, oh, you're going to have really bad bone health, like you could get osteoporosis. And I didn't care. I genuinely didn't care. I was like, I do not care what happens to me. Like, I want to be small, and that's it. That's all I cared about. And at the time, like, I genuinely didn't care about anything else other than that. And then it just got worse. And I remember the worst thing was like lockdown, and I think back to it, and it was actually the most horrendous thing. That was obviously years later. So I'd managed to maintain somehow my life, going to work, not eating very much, going to cheer. I got to like lockdown, and obviously then the gyms were shut, and I was like, oh. And then I used to just literally, I won't say because it's quite, I don't want to trigger anyone, but the amount of exercise I used to do in a day and the littlest food that I ate was ridiculous. Like, it was actually horrible thinking back to it. And I remember when we were finally out of lockdown a little bit, my mum, we went out once, and she was like, oh, we're going to go out for this like carvery, and I was like, in my head, no, I cannot, I wouldn't, like, I'd have a sandwich or something. And she was just like, broke down, she was crying, she's like, you need to, like, I'm so worried about you, like, crying. And then I was like, what the hell am I actually doing? Like, what am I doing? I've literally ruined my life. And I remember looking at photos of myself and thinking, I actually am tiny at this point. But I didn't realise, like, when you look at yourself, you think, I thought I look normal. And I was like, I need to do something. So that was when I first realised I actually had a problem. Because I was like, I'm not only ruining my life, but I'm ruining my family's life. Like, they are literally terrified. And I lived on my own, they never really saw me. I used to stop going around to the house. Like, if they said to come round, I'd be making an excuse up, oh no, I can't, I've got this, I've got that. But really, I was basically just lying in bed so tired and exhausted, like, and then guilty that I couldn't go out. So that was like a turning point for me. But yeah, it was a lot really thinking back to it. I kind of just isolated myself away. And then from there, I was like, right, I'm going to get better. But it was almost like, you can never really fully recover. Well, I don't think. I think it's one of those things that's always in your head. So it would be like I'd got my period back. I was like, brilliant. And then I was like, oh, actually, that means I've gained weight. Like, and then like, oh no, like I need to start. And then I would go back to cheer, because then cheer was back on. It's like, oh, well, now I've got my period back, I'm healthier, but people are going to notice I put weight on. And I always like, whenever I'd eaten something more and I fell at cheer, I'd associate it to I'm heavier now, so that's why I've fallen. And it was just got worse and worse and worse. And I'd be healthier, and then I'd get to Worlds, and I'd have lost weight again. It was like an up and down thing. Until eventually, like in the year before, after Worlds, because after Worlds I'm kind of like, right, I can relax and I eat more. But when you've been in that deprived state for so long, your body's like in starvation mode, and so you eat one thing, and it isn't a binge now, because I've done quite a lot of research on it. It's like this extreme hunger thing where you just want to eat, because your body's like so worried about it hasn't got enough food or energy. So that moved for horrendous, obviously, but I knew that I needed to do it. And I just got to a point where I was like, I can't go back to cheer because I feel absolutely horrific. I can't go because I'd get there and think everyone's going to think I've gained weight and everything. And so I stopped. I said, I can't do it. And that was horrible, really, because I remember like quite a lot of people on the team just didn't like, I don't want to get upset, but a lot of people on the team like didn't really ask if I was okay or anything, and just assumed that I just quit because I just didn't want to do it anymore. And yeah, obviously I didn't really speak about it then because I didn't want anyone to know I got a problem, but I quit because I couldn't mentally do it anymore. And it had like been so many like years. And like one of the people that I thought was my closest friends like never messaged me or anything to see if I was okay, and I asked what I'd left. Yeah, it was hard. And then that same year, I got asked to do bomb squad to finish the season because the flyer wasn't doing it. So I was like, I knew that it was going to be so hard for me, but I wanted to do it because my sister was on the team and I'd be in the same stunt group. So I was like, I'll do it. But then I knew that like my other team that I was on were there, and they were probably going to like think I'd just come back, and I was fine. And like, why did I quit in the first place? But no one obviously knew what I'd gone through, and yeah, it was just horrible. And then I did go back another year, but again, it's just by the end, I got to Worlds, I was in a very dark place again. So it's like I could never win because I'd be healthier, I'd go back, I'd lose weight again, and it was just like a cycle. So,
And I think it consumes you and
Yeah.
it isolates you. And was there a point where your coaches had said, Laura, what's going on?
Well, the thing is, it was like, I don't generally to start with didn't think I had a problem for probably like 2 years. I thought I was being healthy. And then I remember, I think looking back now, I didn't realise at the time I was so underweight and like all I cared about was food and exercise, like literally consumed me. And I remember Sarah saying to me, she's like, "You're right, Laura, like you look like you've lost weight." I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine, yeah." And she goes, "Oh, is it just stress of work?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that was it then.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem, like people would just take what I said because I was an adult. Like, why would you question me?
Yeah.
And then I remember that year, it was like the year after World 20, first year after COVID, and I was really underweight. And I remember after Worlds again, I allowed myself to eat more and like I was healthier and things. I went back to cheer, and one of my bases had left, and so I had a different base, and it's partners, and I kept he hadn't been doing cheer for a while, and I just kept falling, and I was like, oh, shit, I'm gonna have a breakdown in a minute, and I was like, I don't want to, because everyone's gonna be like, what's wrong? Like, why is she having a breakdown? And I remember I was just crying, and Laura put it away, was like, oh, come outside, and she was like, you okay? I was just like, no. I said, I've had this eating problem for like so many years now. Like I don't know why. I just had to say it. It just came out, and after all these years, and I was like, I feel so heavy. And she's like, no, don't be silly. Tyler hasn't done it for ages, and like explained everything. But I was like, it was a big release to say it.
Yeah.
But then it's like, once people, that was it then. Like no one ever said anything to me again about it.
No.
And so then I'd go back the next year, and it was like that was it, and people assumed I was fine. But it never goes away.
No.
Like,
And I think where people seem to think, oh, she's put a bit of weight on, she's recovered, and that's not the case, because it's not just a physical thing.
Yeah.
It's a mental thing.
I think that's it. I've struggled the most when I've gained weight more than anything.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm sort of happy that I've gained weight because I know that my body's working. Like, I was like, I'm not going to be able to have children. I don't want to have like osteoporosis. So that was my thing. I was like, come on, you can do it. But since I put weight on, I would be like lying in bed, like, I'm obese, like, I'm so fat. You've gained so much weight. No one's going to be able to lift you now. You're horrible. You've ruined it. All those years of going through all that, and now you gain weight again. That's all I could think about every single day. And my boyfriend used to come home, and I'd just be like crying. He's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I'm so fat. Like, I've gained weight. I'll never be able to do cheer again." He's like, "You can. Like, if you want to go back, you can." I was like, "No, I can't, because I can't go back, because everyone will know that I've gained weight. I'll be too heavy. I can't do it." And I used to look at myself, and I'd just be like, I look horrific. And even now, like, I've gained like weight, and I'm happy about it. And some days I think, oh, you know what, you look healthier. But other days I wake up and I'll be like, I'm actually horrific. I hate myself. I hate every single thing. And in my head, I'm like, still sometimes I'm like, right, on Monday I'm going to start again. Like, I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm not going to eat this much. And then I have to say to myself, no, like, you can't. You want to go back to that again, and have to say no. And that's why so many people relapse, because it gets to that point where they're at that point where they're just recovering, which is probably where I'm at. And then it's like, this is really, really uncomfortable. I feel horrifically. I hate my body. Like, my clothes aren't fitting me anymore.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's never going to stop. It's never going to go away. So it's like, well, what's the easiest thing to do? Just go back to the beginning again and like stop eating and do more exercise. So yeah.
It just becomes a vicious cycle that you eventually have to get off.
Yeah.
But it's almost like becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and seeing those visible changes and buying that next size up, and it's not easy.
But the thing is, you think it's never, ever going to stop. Like, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to be obese. I'm never going to stop gaining weight.
Yeah.
And you have to think, luckily I've done so much work on like watching videos and like following people that have gone through the same thing and have said, this is how I felt, and I'm like, oh, that's how I feel. Yeah. This is what happened. That's what's happened to me. And I can see that they've got to the side, but it's just that horrible bit of like getting to it before you get to the part, hopefully.
Yeah. So many athletes can be like praised for their like dedication and self-discipline, but I think sometimes this can like, hide those unhealthy behaviours. So you've sort of touched on it previously, but can you remember when you first noticed that you were really struggling and that you sort of needed to reach out and tell someone, and what those sort of like early warning signs and behaviours were?
Like I say, for the first 2 years, I genuinely thought I looked better. Like, in my head, I was like thinner. Like, you could see my muscles more, I guess, because I'd lost weight. And when my mum really was the only person that kind of noticed that there was maybe an issue, because I was lived at home then. And I was so in denial. I was like, no, like, what? I didn't get it. And then I guess it was when someone had asked me to go out, and I'd be like, no, I can't do that because I've got to exercise. Or that was when I kind of noticed there was a problem. But definitely the worst one was lockdown, because I'd kind of been able to manage somehow. That was my life. I kind of just like that was my life. I just got on with it. And I was like, I can't start my day until I've got up at like 6 a.m. and done a run or something, and then I can't eat until a certain time. So it was like every single thing was controlled by this. It was like, you can't eat until this time. You got to run at this amount, and if it's got to be this pace. Then when you come back, you have to do something. It was just like all the time. And mum and dad were like, oh, come round for tea. And I'd be like, oh, no, I can't. Oh, I've already eaten. And I was like, I literally couldn't do anything. So all I was doing was getting up, exercising, eating hardly anything, going to bed feeling exhausted, feeling guilty, fancying my friends. Like, I let so many friends down. So that was when I was like, right, I think like I actually have got a problem, especially my mum was kept saying. So I remember, I don't know how it came about, but I managed to find some people on YouTube that were like recovering. And everything they said was exactly the same as me. And that actually panicked me. Like, I was like, you know, you almost think I am actually seriously unwell now, because I thought this was normal, but it's not. And I could see that they were really struggling. And I was like, that's literally me. And I never thought I'd get to that point. And I look back at photos now, and I was actually severely like underweight. Like, it was really bad. The only person that I spoke to is like my boyfriend now. We were talking at the time. We were kind of talking over lockdown because I lived on my own. And I remember just, I don't know why, how it came about, but I just messaged him about it, and I just like said everything. And he was so nice and like obviously supportive. I was like, it felt so good to actually finally tell someone and admit that I'd got like a problem, because I've spent so many years to everyone in cheer, at work, my family, denying everything, that I'm fine, like eating in front of people, but you eat in front of people, but you don't know that one meal, what you're doing outside of that meal. I've been for a run, I've done this, I've done that. I might not have eaten much earlier, so I was trying to make everyone think that was fine, because I'd eat in front of people, and that's fine. Like,
that might just be the one meal that you're eating that day.
And I'd eat a normal amount, and then that's the thing I'm like now, because I'm thinking sometimes, and it sounds ridiculous, but this is what your brain does. Like, everyone thinks I'm lying about it, like that I'm making up. I think that people just think that I'm making this up for attention or something. Because when I was around people, I did look okay. Like, I would eat. I didn't look, when I was at church, sometimes I didn't look too underweight. So in my head, I'm like, well, now I've said it and come out with it, I think that people might think I'm lying about it. It's just like your brain's
You have a mask, which people don't understand. Unless you've experienced it, or if you're going through it, it is a mask, and you are very skilled. Like you just said then, it's like, actually, I've not had, for example, you may have not had that meal, so actually, but if I save that meal for when I go out with my friends, they're going to think everything's absolutely fine. So absolutely, you do end up wearing that mask 24/7, and no one, unless someone really truly knows you and can pick up on your signs, they won't have a Scooby-Doo.
People don't realise that it affects your whole personality. Like, it's only recently now that I'm like, I can laugh again. No, that's so stupid. I used to laugh, but like in my head, I'd just be thinking about food. Like, if we're having a conversation with anybody, I'd be talking to them, but I'm not taking anything in. I'm not even listening to what they're saying, really, because I'm like, oh, right, it's just like constant thoughts about eating and exercise. And I was just like a shell, really. I didn't have my personality. I didn't laugh. Like, I was just getting through the days, really. And that's when you realise afterwards, when you start getting it back slowly, like, okay, that wasn't me. That was just like consumed by the eating disorder.
I just want to touch on that the YouTube channel that you went on. How did you know to go on that? Like, what was it that made you search?
I don't know. I think I must have just searched like eating disorder recovery or something. And then I saw a video, and then I followed them on Instagram, and it went from there. It was in lockdown definitely, but I reckon I must have just searched like eating disorder recovery or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's people that had gone through the same thing, and it was like talking about compulsive exercise and eating and everything. I was like, it's literally me. But that's basically what saved me, to be honest, because I'd have this thing where obviously your body goes in complete starvation mode, like you've got no energy, and when you eat something that you haven't eaten and restricted for so long, you go into this thing where you eat, like you can't stop eating. Like, it's horrible to think that about how much I used to eat at the time, but that's your body's way of trying to get back the energy that you've been deprived of. But I thought I had a binge eating disorder, so I was like, well, I haven't, like, what am I doing? I can't stop eating. So now it panicked me, and I go into this depressive mode. But then when I used to watch the YouTube videos, it was obviously explaining why that happens and things, and like it will eventually stop. So that's the only reason why I would carry on, because I knew that I thought there's something wrong with me. I was like, this is only happening to me. But it's only when you reach out and see everyone, like loads of people go through the same thing, that you realise that like it's just normal. Your body's like completely deprived of everything, all the energy. It's trying to get it back and save you, basically, keep you alive.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So you've briefly touched on kind of roughly what impact it's had, obviously, with relationships, friends and family. But looking back now, how much of an impact do you feel that it had?
To be honest, I actually think that I've lost like 7 years of my life. Like, I just feel like it's just, that was lost. Like, I miss my friends' parties. Like, I just used to make excuses on the day. I'd be like, right, I'm going to go. And then on the day, I'd be like, I can't go. And I'd be like, I'm really sorry, I'm ill. Or I just make the most ridiculous excuses. But then that wouldn't even help, because you think like you're going to win by doing that. Your brain's going to win and your eating disorder's won, but it hasn't, because then you like start feeling guilty. Like, why would anyone want to be friends with me because I'm not even going to see them? Now I'm just sitting on my own depressed. So it was horrible. Like, I used to miss out on so many social occasions, especially if there's like alcohol involved or food. If I didn't know what food it was going to be, I'd just say no. And once you said no once, it's like, oh, well, I'll just keep doing it then. It's like, it's just like a habit that happens, and it's really hard to get out of. So yeah, definitely my family, because I knew my mum was worried, so I didn't want to see her, because I was like, if I see her, she's going to want to say something about it. I don't want to talk about it. I want to avoid it at all costs. So then I'd make excuses up. And then it's like, well, I'm pushing my family away now. And then I used to feel sorry for them, because I was like, they do so much for me. And it was just horrible. Like, I lost basically loads of friends. And even now, like, I've lost touch with a lot of them, probably because of that. But it's hard to say, like, I haven't spoken to you for ages because I've had a eating disorder. Like, you don't want to say that.
No.
People don't understand. Like, they just think, oh, well, you're just not eating. But they don't realise how complex it is.
A lot of people that haven't been through it, don't they? They just assume it's an attention seeking, and it's not. It's literally the devil is in your head at all times. And you're like, yeah, like literally you were saying earlier how you're getting to this point. It's like, actually, do you know what? I'm healthy. I feel great. And then it's that one trigger and you're like, and you're straight back down, and it's horrendous. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
No. And I think as well, like, one time you say yes to it, it's like, right, I've got to say yes to it again. It's like, right, I'm doing really well, and it's like this voice, it's like, oh, don't eat that because it's got this, or do this extra workout, and then it's like, you do it once, and it's like, right, you've done it once now, so now you've got to do it again. It feels like you're addicted to it. You have to do it, and it's like, people just think you're just choosing to lose weight, like, say, for attention, but I would literally, by the end of it, when people were complimenting me on how I looked, I was like, I do not want to hear it. I don't want anyone to be saying, like, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, I wouldn't even say anything back to be honest. I just stand there, because I was just like, I don't want you to think this is good.
No.
This is horrific. Like, I might look okay and it might look pleasing to some people, but that isn't healthy. I wasn't having my periods. Like, I was so exhausted. At one point, I had this bald patch on my head, and my head fell out. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like, my body's got no energy to even have hair. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You talk about it now, and it does sound ridiculous, but when you're in that moment, like, that's all you care about.
It is all you care about, and
That's your life.
Yeah, that's it, and that's what consumes you, and that's what isolates you, and that's what also motivates you. Even you've got no energy, but it's like, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do that 10k run because
I remember
I need to.
The worst thing was when I was at Worlds, and when I knew that I'd had it for a few years now, and I was trying to work through it, but it'd always get to Worlds, and I'd want to like lose weight and look leaner for uniforms, you know, the aesthetic that everybody wants. But I remember like setting up for a full out, and I thought, what am I doing? I've got no energy. I actually might faint in this full out. But then on my other hand, it was like, well, if you eat, then you're not going to be as light, so you're not going to perform as well. So it's like, I was standing there at the start of routine thinking, I might faint during this full out because I'm so dizzy. But then I was like, I can't eat because I need to be light. So it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing?
How did you navigate that? Because performing with no energy is tough. It's really tough. And you've got to stand there, and you've got to stand on one leg.
Yeah.
You've got to try not to fall.
To be honest, I actually don't know. Because the thing is as well, when you get to being that ill, you're not even at cheer thinking about the stunts. I'm at cheer thinking, firstly, am I small enough to fly? Like, I look bigger than everyone else. But then also, when you get to the other extreme, I was sometimes thinking, oh my God, I'm like too thin now. And it was weird, because your brain can never win.
No.
I was either too big and I was heavy, or oh my God, you're too thin, what have you done? Like, you're now smaller than everybody else. What if someone drops you and you break your leg because you're so weak? Like, so no matter where I was never going to win.
No.
Like, I was never going to beat it. So I remember going through routines and thinking, not about the stunts or hitting them, I was thinking, right, don't fall, or like trying to basically push myself through, not fainting or feeling weak. I just felt so exhausted. Yeah. I don't actually know how I did it, to be honest. Like, I don't know. I had no energy at all.
So particularly in sports, there is like an emphasis on appearance, or maybe like specific weight categories, so that athletes can then feel that intense pressure to maintain like a certain body image. How do you think these pressures affect athletes, like physically and mentally?
I think it's just like the culture in cheer, definitely. It's like, you've got these cropped uniforms that you have to wear.
Yeah.
People want to look slim in them. They're quite tight. Like, I don't even think just for flyers, I think for anyone on teams, feel the pressure to look a certain way. Because all you see on social media are people in the uniforms, like all the uniform brands, they will post people that are muscular physique, like quite lean. So therefore, you're like, okay, well, that's how I should look.
Yeah.
And especially flyers, I think you always want to be the smallest because that's the culture. Especially now, like think back in the day, like when I first started cheer, like senior elite, you had Maddie Gardner, really tall, normal size, perfect. She was amazing, probably the best flyer of the time. As the years have gone on, you've now got people that are like 12 years old in the air flying at Worlds. They're tiny. They haven't even gone through puberty.
Yeah.
But that makes it worse for people that were like my age, that were like, well, I'm competing against people that are children, so I need to be small. So I think that's the main pressure with the flyers, because you want to be the smallest because you're competing against people that are tiny. Why would they pick me when they've got someone that's really small? So I think that's the main thing. And I think, like I say, definitely the culture of cheer is to look slim or muscly, like not normal. And that's the thing, people think that being lean like that is normal. Was so hard for me to get to look like that. It's not normal to have that percentage of body weight. It's not normal, and it's not healthy. Like I lost my period, my body wasn't able to function because I didn't have enough energy. But people think that's normal, and that's the problem. People think that is a normal physique to look at, but actually that isn't healthy. But that's what society says is. Not always. Like I know there's a lot of like body positivity things coming around these days, but potentially not in cheer.
Yeah.
And because it's normal, people don't see it as a problem, because no one's really raised it as an issue, because that's what people think is normal.
Yeah. And even I don't know if you've watched the documentary on the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, and even then they've got this set uniform and it's this set size, and you have to fit this. And I just think still
it's so bad
in this day and age we're still doing that, and you know to make that you've got to have a certain physique.
Obviously we won't say like what gyms and things, but I've heard things about gyms that will like measure the height of the flyers or weigh them, or have to be like, I know at Team USA at one point had to be like the flyers had to be under like 5 foot something, otherwise they couldn't make the team. Like why? Like you have to be strong to fly.
Yeah.
And I wasn't strong by the end. I was weak. Like so yeah, that's just the culture though, I guess, isn't it? It's really bad.
I think I can relate to that because I remember my very first cheer session, I was 12 and I was a flyer, and I never wanted anything less. And it was always then, I need to remain the smallest.
Yeah.
You have to be the smallest, because that way I'm going to be the best athlete, because
100%.
I'm going to be light, I'm going to look good in my uniform, people are going to be able to throw me around, when in reality, your whole body is just depleted of anything.
Exactly.
And you're shaky in the air.
So shaky.
You can't tumble. You just...
And I think when like, as I got older, I was coaching as well, and you'd hear other coaches say, oh, well, she's a bit too big to fly now, like, she needs a base or whatever. Well, then I'm like, oh, well, that could be me. And if you're a flyer and you see someone's taken out of the air, you assume it's because they're too big. It might not be the case, but that was my first thing. They're not flying anymore because they're too big. So therefore, right, I'm going to do every single thing I can to remain to fly, and that's whatever I need to do, be the smallest I can.
Yeah. And I think as well, as you're getting older and the younger ones are coming up, and you're thinking...
That's the pressure then.
Like, our bodies naturally change as we get older.
Yeah.
You're 21, 25, 30, like, we're naturally changing. But if you've got a 14, 15-year-old coming up, you're thinking, well, how can I compete with that? Okay, the only thing I can do is to drop weight.
Yeah.
And remain small. So I am smaller than that 14-year-old that's coming up.
Yeah.
And when in reality, it's not healthy.
It's really bad. It's horrible.
It really is. So again, we've briefly touched up on this. So at what point did you decide that enough was enough? I need to get help. I need to try and address this. Could you kind of go in a little bit more detail if you're comfortable to?
Yeah, so I kind of tried to manage it myself to begin with. Obviously, it was lockdown, and my mum had this big breakdown, and I'd had the breakdown, and I was severely underweight. And I was like, I need to do something. So I started watching these YouTube videos, and I was like, okay, what can I do? And then I started to like try and increase the food that I was doing. But in the end, I kind of came to a thing in my brain where I was like, I just need to let go of everything. And it was the perfect time during lockdown towards the end, because no one would see me. So I was like, well, I can eat what I want. No one's going to see me or judge me. So it was actually the perfect time for me to try. And I remember, like, at this point you could go to like different people's houses, because it's the second one, I think. So I could go to my mum and dad's house, and I just said to myself, I'm just going to let myself eat what I want. And I did. And it was so freeing, to be fair. Like, I was like, I actually cannot have to think about this in my head all the time. I can just eat and not think. Obviously, I was thinking sometimes like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but I was like, because I'd said to myself I can eat what I want. I didn't have to think about that all day. I was like, I can go around and I could actually have conversations with mum and dad normally. We'd go out for dog walks and like I could laugh again because I wasn't thinking about food all the time. So that's kind of where it started, and I started to try and do like quite a lot of self-help. Like I say, watched loads of YouTube videos. I was following people on Instagram, and it was so helpful because all the things that I was going through that they'd gone through and they could give advice on. So that's how it started. And then from then, it wasn't linear because obviously I got to a point where I was like uncomfortable. I lost a bit of weight again. I started cheer again. I managed to somehow from then maintain my periods. They were irregular at some points. I did lose them when I lost weight, but they came back. So I was really lucky actually. And then I did have some counselling as well. I decided, you know what? Because I remember mum was saying like, oh, we're going to go to New York, and obviously the first thing that comes to my head is I'm not going to be able to exercise when I'm there. Like food. I was like, why am I thinking that? I was like, why am I? This should be like an amazing thing to go to New York, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do about exercise? What am I going to do about food? And I was like, I can't live like this anymore. So that's when I was like, right, do you know what? I'm going to get a counsellor as well. But the thing, it will never go away. Like it will never go away, and that's the hardest thing because I've got so much better, and I have to remind myself that because when I look back now, like how bad it was, I am so much better. But every single day, I've got a voice in my head telling me what to do and what not to do, and that's the hardest thing that it's happened. It's like, why has it happened to me? Like, why have I got this? But I was reading somewhere that actually it's like genetic if you've got it. So once you start losing weight, when you get to like a trigger point of losing enough weight, this gene is like hooks you basically, and that's when you kind of like the anorexic gene comes out. So let's say if I didn't lose that certain amount of weight, it might have never would have been triggered, but you can't help it. You've just born with it basically, if you've got that gene or not. But it obviously depends if you lose the weight and get to the point where your brain takes over. So yeah, it's hard. It's just annoying. It's like, can you just go away?
It is, and it's like you said, it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But you don't quite realise, and then all of a sudden it's taken over everything.
100%. Like when it happens so gradually, and then suddenly you're in a point where you're like, my whole life, I haven't got a life.
Yeah.
My life
My
is
life is that.
cheerleading, being small, eating as minimal as I can, listening to my brain telling me when to eat, telling me what to do, how much exercise to do, and then it's like, that isn't a life.
No.
I think now I've stopped cheer, I don't have to worry about that, and to realise there is so much more to life. And so it has taken to the point where I had to stop for it to be better.
Yeah, for sure.
How's your relationship with your mum now then?
It's a lot better because I can talk to it. Because before it was kind of like I was defending myself by saying I haven't got an issue. Whereas now she'll ask me, like, to be honest, I do hate talking to my mum about it. I hate it. Because she's like a counsellor as well. So she sees people that have gone through similar issues. But she's very protective. And she always has been since my whole life. She's been protective with anything like going out, picking me up at 12. I was never allowed to go to these after parties. She's quite a protective, like strict parent. So I always want to please her. So whenever I'm not, it's scary. So I'm more comfortable talking about it, but still I want to shut it down straight away. So I will speak about it, and she'll ask me how I'm doing, and I'll say, but then I quickly want to change conversations. But in general with my family, like, it's so much better because we went away to Cornwall actually in summer, and this is like the first time since cheer fully, and we could go out, and it was like mum was like, what do you want for tea? And before I'd be like, oh, like trying to think of like the best food for me. I was like, just choose, because I'd rather not have the control anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, you tell me what we're having, and I'll just choose something.
Yeah.
Because if I start controlling it or choosing things, that's when it'll start creeping in. It's just draining, so I'm like, just choose.
It's tiring. It is
so
exhausting.
tiring.
Because as people that know me, I've been very open about having an eating disorder. And when I was training for my pageant, I ended up hiring a coach because mine is very similar to yours, where I'd be like, I have to eat or I have to exercise. And if I haven't exercised, then I'm not eating because I don't deserve to exercise.
Exactly.
And it is a vicious cycle. So I ended up hiring a coach to tell me what I'm eating, when I'm eating, how much it's going to weigh.
Yeah.
You do find a new way to manage it, but
Yeah.
I did feel healthier. I was falling in love back with training in the gym again. Even though it sounds a bit more restrictive, it actually for me was a bit more of a positive. Someone else was taking that control for me.
They're telling you what's healthy. Like, this is what a normal person should eat. Because I find, like, well, what is normal anymore? Like, I've had this for like 9 years. What is a normal day of eating? I don't even know. Like, so probably to have someone telling you, like, this is what you should eat. Actually, some people say, well, that's restrictive and you still like following. But actually, no, because I don't even know what's normal. And like, this is not more than I'd normally have anyway.
Yeah.
So that's like a positive thing.
Like, even the simple thing is like people going, oh, you can't have that, like it's too fatty. Whereas like olive oil and coconut oil, women actually need it. We need that fat in our body.
Sure.
But sometimes you have to have that person to go, no, you need this because it's X, Y, C. And you're like, oh, I didn't realise.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, though. I found that really like struggling with other people around, I would sway what I'm eating depending on what someone else is eating. So if I wanted something, they're having less than me, I'm like, oh my God, I can't eat that now, I need to have less.
Yeah.
And so I found that the worst thing, and like if someone was selecting something on the menu that was less than what I was having, I'd first of all, I'd try and be like, why are you getting that? Why don't you get like something else? It's like you had to control everyone else, not only yourself. And if they decided to get something smaller, I'd be like, well, I'm going to get something smaller. Like, it was like whatever someone else was having, if it was less, I had to meet that or eat less than them. And it's like, I shouldn't even be worrying about what anyone else is eating, but that's what happens.
I remember going out with friends and they'd all have like burger, and I'd be like, okay, they're all having burgers and chips, really fancy a burger, but can I please substitute the chips for a salad? And it was like, why? I'm eating the burger anyway. I may as well just chuck the chips in with it.
Or it was like, oh, I'll have burger and chips, but everyone else will eat there, so I'll leave some of it. It was like,
I'll leave a quarter
how
of the
many chips should
burger.
I eat? But then like my brain's telling me like, you really want to eat these chips, and I'm like, I have to leave something. I have to leave something on my plate because I can't eat everything. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I just want to go back to the counselling side. So did you seek help privately, or did you go through like NHS?
Yeah, so I went to, it was like on national, the regional like NHS one, and they at the time had like a waiting list for the Beat eating disorder Zoom cut ones. So I had to wait not too long, to be fair, and I had like 6 appointments with them. But by that time, when I was speaking to her, because I'd done so much self-help, I was more saying about my struggles and like my thoughts and things. And she was like talking to me about it and telling me like what to do. But I already had done quite a lot of self-help, that like I knew these things were wrong. I knew what I needed to do. It was almost just following through with the actions. So I think I probably needed that a little bit earlier on, to be honest, because I'd done quite a lot of self-help. But it was useful to speak to somebody, and she would be like, right, because sometimes it was almost like an emotional thing. Like she'd be like, oh, that links to this, that links to that. I'm like, yeah, actually, yeah, that's why you felt so much anxiety and stress during that situation. Yeah. Like, yeah, so it's quite nice to talk about not only the eating side, but it's not just about how you look, it's actually an emotional connection with different things as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, we've spoken about how you can recover, but it's something that's always going to be there. It's like a box that's shut, but it's a little bit ajar. And I think it's about knowing what your triggers are and how to manage that to move forward. And every day is a new day, and every day can bring a new trigger. And sometimes for myself, if, you know, particularly if like a holiday's coming up or it's the summer and, you know, you want to look your best, sometimes, you know, you have to take that break from certain people on social media or watching certain programs. Every day is a battle, but, you know, every day is a new day. Yeah. So
I think it's so easy sometimes, because I'm like looking back at face, I'm like, oh, wish I looked like that again. And like, you just want to go back to it. And I'm like, hang on, that wasn't an enjoyable life. But it's so easy to think like, I've ruined everything. Like, I used to have this physique and wanting to go back to it. Like, say you go on holiday, oh, well, remember when I used to wear that bikini and I was this, it's just, it's never ending. There's always going to be something that's trying to pull you back. Yeah. Like, I went shopping yesterday and I was like, oh, like, it sounds silly, but I was walking around thinking, oh my God, everyone is now smaller than me. Like, everyone around me is walking and shopping and has got smaller legs than me. Like, now I've got to get big. It's just like, never stops.
It's a constant battle.
It never stops.
It really is.
It's draining.
So how do you think the sports world can better support athletes with mental and physical health to help sort of prevent eating disorders? And what changes would you like to see in the culture around sport and body image?
I think it's so hard, because since I've opened up, you wouldn't believe the amount of people that have said they've gone through the same thing. And no one knew that I had a problem, and that's the problem. Like, really, no one really knew, because I didn't tell anyone. No one asked me if I was okay, like, and if they did, I'd just say I'm fine, especially with older people. So I think it is like checking in and find something early on needs to happen. Yeah. And if you know, like, because I can imagine some children have got eating disorders and their parents have told coaches, and that's fine. But it's almost like if they look healthy-ish to not pass out, then they'll be allowed to carry on. Yeah.
No one's
saying actually, anything. I don't think it's healthy at all. I don't think it's healthy that they're even cheering if they're in that mindset, because it wasn't healthy for me, and I managed to do it for 8 years, but I managed to get out of it. So there definitely needs to be some changes, especially like if you open up or someone knows, there should be like a check-in. I don't think that happens, like check-ins with coaches, ask how you are. It's so hard because they're silent, aren't they? You can't see it.
And that's the thing. It's, so many people say, well, she doesn't look like she's got an eating disorder. Exactly. And it's like the eating disorder starts way before they have
100%.
Lost weight or they've gained the weight. It starts way before, and I think that's within the sport community is probably something that there needs to be someone that they feel comfortable talking to, someone that can help spot these early warning signs.
I think as well, if I had to have someone that was going through the same thing to talk to, like when I found the YouTube channel and there was someone going through the same thing as me, that was so helpful, because I was like, I'm not the only person that's going through this. Yeah. but there's not really anything in cheer, is there?
No.
It's just kind of like, there's nothing.
No.
So yeah, it's hard to say what you could do to help, but I know that some people are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just the culture of the sport, that people are choosing to fly because they're smaller, and that's where it starts, really. So, yeah.
But I think you being here today and opening up and speaking about this will hopefully, show that there is people, out there that there is help available.
Yeah,
So I think
no,
you
definitely.
For athletes or anyone listening who might be struggling or in a very similar situation to yourself, what message of hope or encouragement would you like to share with them?
I think it's hard because when I was in that, like I say, I didn't care about anything else. But actually, you do get to a point where you realise, I can't live like this anymore. But it's actually taking a step back and thinking, cheerleading isn't going to happen forever. Like, your sport isn't going to happen forever. Like, there is life outside of it. And sometimes it just takes that time to just step away. Even when I stopped, like, the last season, the end of the season, and actually gave myself a break, you realise there is, like, a different life. And there is support there. And I'd say actually reach out and look for things online, because that's the only thing that helped me. Because I was like, if I didn't have that, I would have just thought there's something wrong with me, and I'll just revert back to it and back and back and back. But actually to have someone to look at that's gone through the same thing helped me so much. And there is like a light outside the tunnel, like I'm getting there.
Yeah.
You can get there. And there's some people that have got through the same thing, and you realise that you can have freedom and a life again. Yeah, I definitely think maybe just more people to look, like influencers to like look through that have been through the same things, like the main thing that helped me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your
Thank
story
you.
today. It's been really inspiring, and we wish you all the best on your recovery.
Thank you for having me.
We would like to thank you for listening to today's episode. Cheerleading is a sport that we both fell completely in love with and dedicated so many years to. But also, unfortunately, the topic around eating disorders is something that is close to both of us. So if you are struggling with an eating disorder or you are worried about someone close to you, please know that there is help available. We encourage you to seek support from a trusted professional. And if you are watching this episode from our YouTube channel, please check out the resources we have included at the end.
Tune in with us every other Monday. You don't want to miss out on the incredible guests and their stories along the way.
I'm Demi.
I'm Nat. Bye.